Because the Wolf King had several 100,000 lesser wolves, finding the pack's location was not too difficult. Young Monli delivered the information to Han Sen within a couple of days. The wolf pack was easy to find, but hunting the alpha amidst several 100,000 other wolves would be a task that required proper strength. This is indeed a gift that God has prepared for me. Han Sen looked at young Monli's research and made immediate preparations to take off. He didn't bring Wang Yuhang along because he was afraid something might go wrong if the man was present. Alphas or kings of large packs of creatures were always far greater than their lesser counterparts, but in regards to super creatures, it entirely depended on their body. Their powers would be weaker, but they would be smarter. For Han Sen, this was the perfect opportunity. The silver fox was coming along, so that'd be enough to keep the wolves at bay while he took on the king one-up. Han Sen happily ran across the northern fields. Before he went into battle, he wanted to test the power of the flaming Rex spike first. The wolf pack was enormous. After asking around, Han Sen knew where it was currently going. He went straight there, wanting to get to the king before Lu Hui and his people did. Han Sen raced there, running throughout the day and subsequent night. Finally, he arrived. They looked like ordinary gray wolves, but it was their numbers that made their presence so intimidating. To prevent the Wolf King from escaping, Han Sen ran straight to the center of the pack with the silver fox in hand. As expected, the wolves along the way parted and formed a path for Han Senator. None dared to get close. Han Sen walked 100 miles and finally found the Wolf King atop a small hill. It didn't look particularly striking, and it had no remarkable features. It looked almost like an ordinary gray wolf, save for being a bit larger and having a blue mark branding its forehead. There didn't seem to be any elemental attributes to its pelt, either. When Han Sen saw it, it was lying down in a grassy outcrop atop the hill. It squinted its eyes at the challenger that had come for it. It's no wonder Lu Hui wants to kill this thing. It looks far too easy. Han Sen summoned his flaming Rex spike, a 2-meter-long lance-like weapon, which he held with one hand. The flames that blazed across it made it look frightening. But before Han Sen approached the Wolf King any closer, it stood up and howled to the sky. "My little gray thing, simmer down. No other wolf will come and save you, no matter how loud you howl." Han Sen looked at the Wolf King howling and laughed. The next second, Han Sen's smile froze in place. A chorus of howls joined in, coming from all around him. He could see the shadows of other wolves inching closer from every direction, and the glare of their hungry eyes watched him intently.
Impossible.
How can these gray wolves not be afraid of the silver fox's presence? Han Sen was shocked. There were now a few 100,000 wolves snarling at him. There were countless mutant-class wolves and a lot of sacred blood-class wolves. Even if Han Sen stood there, ready to kill them, there were too many and he'd run out of stamina and become too exhausted to continue before being able to slay them all. But Han Sen quickly understood, as he looked at the blue symbol on the Wolf King's forehead. The eyes of the other wolves were all starting to turn a menacing shade of blue, and even their fur was beginning to adopt the tint. Rage, cruelty, violence. These words were apt to describe each and every wolf that snarled in Han Sen's direction. The Wolf King was still quietly standing on the hill as it peered down at Han Senator around it. A dozen sacred blood gray wolves formed a circle. Han Sen, without hesitating, summoned his wings and tried to escape. He could kill sacred blood creatures, but his fitness was only a little bit better, which meant they could damage him. Plus, with the wretched number of wolves that were there in support of the Wolf King, even the queen and little uncle wouldn't have been enough assistance, and the chance of victory would still have been slim to none. As Han Sen took off into the skies, the Wolf King began howling upwards, too. The blue light on its forehead shone even brighter, like a beacon. Its gray body began to shine blue now, too. Hull. All the wolves began jumping up as high as they could, trying to capture the intruder. These ordinary wolves, though they did not possess wings, could still glide through the air. The wolf pack was like a tsunami, howling as they surfed the air in pursuit of their prey. Han Sen was again shocked, recognizing that he had underestimated the Wolf King. It was, after all, the king of a pack and a super creature to boot. How could he have expected things to be so simple? Han Sen now understood that a super creature that led a pack would not be any better than a super creature that roamed solo. In some ways, they were even scarier. Last time, Han Sen had watched Lu Hui command an army of soldiers to swarm an attacker, and now, the wolf was commanding an army to attack him. Han Sen was swinging the flaming Rex spike with great ferocity, but none of the wolves feared it. Every single one of them was glowing blue, their eyes a sunken sapphire as they jumped towards Han Sen. The flaming Rex spike swept and sent a grand multitude of wolves flying away like shooting stars, alight with fire. Their bodies were burnt black in seconds. Some managed to stand back up and resume their pursuit, uncaring for the flames that continued to ravage their bodies. Kill, kill, kill. Han Sen kept swinging his flaming Rex spike in a bid to escape as they swarmed beneath him. As he went, he killed countless wolves. More and more he killed, but there was no end to the horde of wolves. Fortunately, Han Sen had practiced Long Live and Jade Sun Force, which constantly imbued him with the energy to sustain his hard-fought attempt of escape. For over 100 miles he went, leaving a trail of bloody, beaten, and charred wolf corpses in his wake. But still, they did not relent. Han Sen noticed that most of the wolves he had killed were just ordinary ones, but there was nothing else he could do. The gray wolves were like well-trained soldiers. They were using a formation to surround Han Sen, and their precision and cooperative cohesion made him unable to escape the higher-class variants of wolves. The silver fox had been lying on Han Sen's shoulder the entire time, unmoving. It coldly looked back in the Wolf King's direction, as if something had just alerted it. The Wolf King did not come after them, or at least, Han Sen could not see the shadow of the Wolf King. He had no idea what was wrong with the other wolves, however. It was as if they had no fear of death, and they could perfectly react to all of Han Sen's moves. He continued for 300 miles. Han Sen thought he was going to drown under the waves of gray wolves when the horde finally began to thin out, and eventually retreated. Just as Han Sen thought he could be spared some respite and recovery, he heard a sound from not too far away. Across the fields in another direction, a stampede of horses came running towards him like the waves of the sea. Above them all, a handsome horse king commanded the skies, flapping its angelic wings as it surveyed the lands around it. Holy smokes! I escaped the territory of the wolves only to end up in the realm of horses? Han Sen was glum as he watched the winged horses, the Pegasi, approach. He wanted to slap himself, thinking, why did I even come here in the first place? I should have stuck to searching for solo super creatures. Trying to take advantage of others will get me killed, Han Sen sighed. Fortunately, there seemed to be a no-man's land between the pack of wolves and the soaring Pegasi. They didn't come his way, which gave him the opportunity to rest for a brief while. Han Sen did not dare fly in the sky. There'd be no advantage up there, considering that Pegasi were flying creatures. He landed on the grass and took a good look around. There was nothing remarkable about the place, as it was just a grassy field. For dozens of miles around, there was no sign of the Pegasi or wolves. After Han Sen took a closer look, the grass was shorter than elsewhere. Some of the grass was even yellowish in color. It was very different than the fresh, long, green grass that was in the fields to the left and right of the one he currently stood in. Aside from that, there was nothing special. There wasn't even a lake or pond, just a grassy field. The wolves and horses stared at him, but kept their distance. They weren't leaving, so Han Sen decided to stay put while he was safe. He didn't think the wolves or horses could be bothered watching him like that for a long time. But quickly, Han Sen realized something was wrong. The horses and wolves really did stay there, taking turns with others in their own groups to watch Han Sen. Luckily, Han Sen had brought many provisions with him, including nutrient solutions. He could remain in this field for 2 months, if need be. But even if he did stay where he was for the next 2 months, what was the point? The wolves and horses did not want to leave. 2 weeks passed, and they still remained outside the field watching Han Sen, not allowing him to leave. Silver Fox, you're going to have to do something and help me find a way out of this mess. You're not going to wait until I'm dead before you run off, are you? Han Sen put the silver fox in front of his face and said, this is not right. There's not much difference between a fox and a wolf, is there? Can't you go and talk to the Wolf King on my behalf, and tell him it was all just a big misunderstanding? Han Sen put him down and the silver fox lay on the ground, blinking at Han Sen. Han Sen felt as if he'd be better off talking with a rock. So he circled the entire field multiple times, evaluating what options there were for escape, but did not discover anything viable. If escaping won't work, then so be it. I'll have to fight my way out. I definitely can't leave through the Pegasi side, as their numbers seem greater than that of the wolves. They can fly too. That'll surely be the more dangerous way. Han Sen then looked at the wolf side. He observed the wind blowing through the grass, which revealed the gray backs of hidden wolves. Heaven knew how many lurked in the tall grass, waiting for Han Sen. Han Sen could only watch their movements, waiting for the right moment to slice his way through the hordes and make a daring escape. It would be best if he could confirm the location of the Wolf King, so at least he would have a chance of taking a shot at it. But alas, he could not spot it, and such a move could not currently be made. After a while, Han Sen saw the horses in a state of mild unrest. In the group of horses, a red pony appeared. They parted and formed a path for it, not daring to touch it. Is that the child of a super creature? Han Sen took a look and was surprised. The red pony did not seem to have been born very long ago. It looked rather curious, and even the sacred blood class Pegasi avoided its approach. If I kidnapped the red pony, could I use it to escape the crowd of horses? Han Sen's heart birthed this evil thought, wondering if he could put a knife to the red pony's neck and broker a deal with the Horse King. But Han Sen quickly dropped the idea. Creatures were not humans, and if they saw Han Sen threaten the red pony, they'd probably opt to kill Han Sen rather than negotiate. Although the red pony was small, it was a super creature. Han Sen was not entirely sure he could deal with it solo anyway. The red pony seemed curious about everything. It opened its eyes wide and looked at Han Sen and the silver fox with great interest. The red pony tried to enter Han Sen's field on numerous occasions, but each time, the Horse King stopped it and sent it back. Before the red pony was taken away, it looked back and almost seemed upset. That's a shame. If that red pony came here on its own, perhaps I really could kidnap it.
Han Sen tweaked, disappointed.
That night, Han Sen lay on the grass observing the night skies. He counted the stars that glistened above. It was quite boring, so he summoned the angel and Princess Yin Yang to talk. As they were talking, they heard noise from the horse crowd. Looking over there, Han Sen saw the red pony sneak his way, with its eyes fixated on him. Han Sen was happy when he saw it, but it caused a commotion in the horse crowd. They neighed repeatedly, as if they were trying to convince the red pony to return to them. But no matter how much noise they made, they did not dare to enter the area like the red pony had. The Horse King was nowhere to be seen, however, and Han Sen did not know why. The red pony ignored its brethren and continued to approach Han Senator. It looked to its left and right up until it was about 20 meters away. Then, it stood where it was and just watched Han Sen and his companions. Come here, little child. Come here. Han Sen's face was crowned with a strange smile. He reached out both arms to the red pony, as if he was calling for a baby to crawl to him. But the red pony took a few step backs, and its eyes looked alert. It didn't trust Han Sen. Han Sen noticed that his behavior was like any old, creepy uncle that wished to kidnap a child. Quickly, he put away his grinning face and put on his look of innocence as if he were swapping masks. As he did, he thought of how he might be able to attract the red pony towards him. Han Sen threw some jerky on the ground and bid for the pony to eat it, but it was ignored. Do horses only enjoy eating grass? Han Sen's heart felt bad. He looked in his pockets, and there was nothing he could use to attract the red pony, so he wasn't sure what to do. But the red pony, after a while longer of looking, seemed to drop some of its apprehension. Slowly, it began to walk closer and closer to Han Sen. The crowd of horses was in a frenzy, as countless horses surrounded the area, crying repeatedly. It was like they were pleading for the red pony to return and for Han Sen not to hurt it. Han Sen suddenly thought something had to be wrong. If the wolves and horses were avoiding each other, maybe that was why they did not come any closer? But now that the red pony was inside, why did the other horses not come? The red pony was hesitant to approach at first, but after circling them for some time, It acknowledged there was no danger. After coming to this realization, it was happy to stay in Han Sen's company. Although Han Sen still wanted to kidnap the red pony, he wasn't going to rush things until he was sure it was comfortable. He watched it walk around and waved to it occasionally, appearing as friendly as he could. When its fear had totally disappeared, it came close to Han Sen and sniffed him. Han Sen was ambivalent right now. He wasn't sure if he should take the pony now or not. This was his best opportunity, but he was uncertain whether capturing a super creature, regardless of its age, was a wise thing to do. Besides, the red pony seemed to be a little antsy. The horses on the perimeter of Han Sen's little sanctuary were still in a frenzy, too, neighing with madness. If ice could kill, Han Sen would have been nothing but bits. But the silver fox looked a little upset. It jumped into Han Sen's lap, gritted its teeth, and growled. The red pony was unnerved by this, which displeased Han Senator. He was afraid that the silver fox would scare off the red pony, so he put it down on the ground. But the red pony was only given a jump scare. After taking a few steps, it looked at the silver fox that continued to growl and stare back at it with hostility. Strangely, it looked happier now. The red pony approached Han Sen and buried its head into Han Sen's chest and rubbed it. This made the silver fox really mad. If Han Sen didn't shut him down now, the red pony would, quite literally, be in for a shock. Han Sen reached out his hand to stroke the mane of the red pony. The pony remained where it was, allowing Han Sen to touch it as much as he wanted. It seemed to enjoy the strokes. But when Han Sen touched it, the Pegasi that continued to watch looked even angrier. They started flapping their wings, taking off into the skies, circling the field. There were so many of them. They blocked out the sunlight, and they all continued to neigh with rage. It looked as if they would swoop down any second and crush Han Sen. But they didn't. Good child. Come here. Come here. Let me hug you. Han Sen reached out his hands to hug the pony, which it didn't resist. In fact, it looked even happier. As comfortable as it looked, Han Sen still had a split mind. Now was most certainly the best chance for Han Sen to kidnap it, but he didn't know if the Pegasi King would let him go free with a hostage. If they didn't care and started attacking him anyway, it'd all be over for him. Eventually, he did not do it. He let the pony go, and it rested near him. It looked really naive, but Han Sen knew its behavior wasn't something that was likely to stay true over time. When it grew up, it'd most likely end up like the violent Pegasi above. While Han Sen mulled the idea a while longer, his heart suddenly jumped with alarm. He thought the red pony was going to get mad. He took a step back and looked at it, but the red pony was still being its cute self. The next second, vine-like tentacles pierced through the ground and moved towards Han Sen. The tentacles were extremely fast, but they seemed to mostly go for the red pony. Han Sen reacted and jumped into the sky. The red pony wasn't so lucky. No matter how strong it was, it hadn't been born for a long time and it lacked experience in the world. The vast number of tentacles grabbed it tight. Then, the field of grass split in two, unearthing a giant gully. The tentacles that had writhed around the pony started dragging it towards the pit. The pony began neighing with its lighter, younger tone. Its body shone red just like the ruby light of a police siren. The red light sliced through the vine-like tentacles, which then dropped to the ground spewing green blood. But more and more tentacles appeared, doing their best to choke the pony and drag it towards the hole. Han Sen looked at the pit and could only see red in there. Sharp teeth, lined up like cogwheels, circled its entirety. Han Sen was unable to fathom what manner of wretched creature had been lurking beneath his feet. It's no wonder why neither the wolves nor Pegasi dared approach me, with such a horrible creature lying here. Han Sen saw that the red pony was only moments away from being pulled into the hungry, exposed mouth. He frowned and summoned his flaming Rex spike and began swinging it. The flames burned brightly as the heavy weapon annihilated any tentacle it came into contact with, quickly incinerating them into charcoal. The broken tentacles dropped onto the ground on fire. Soon after, the red pony was free from the monster's grasp. The pony had not yet developed the ability to fly. Since it was still grounded, it looked like it was going to be grabbed again by freshly sprouted tentacles. So Han Sen picked up the red pony and flew off into the sky. The creature that had been lying beneath the ground was so strange. Han Sen was not sure why it seemed to show so much interest in the red pony. Han Sen and the silver fox had barely been given any attention. The subterranean monster seemed to only focus on the pony. Han Sen, with the pony in his arms, begun flying away. The unknown monster let out a soul-shriveling roar, which made the ground tremble. Tentacles burst forth from the ground, lifting the entirety of the grass field with it. It was like watching a creature emerge from the most rotten pits of hell. It was a giant worm that looked like a centipede. Only a portion of its body had been revealed, but it was already unimaginably big. Like a train, it was shooting out of a tunnel a few dozen meters into the air. The entirety of its back was hairy, and the tentacles had Han Sen and the red pony in their sights. They were coming was too fast, far faster than Han Sen's berserk sacred blood wings. Furthermore, the hair on its back turned out to be tentacles themselves, and they were adamant in preventing the departure of their prey. Han Sen let loose the power of his flaming Rex spike and hacked off a grand number of the monster's tentacles with a rage-fueled strike. Flames then shot across the sky. Casting arrow, Han Sen used it to soar through the air and dodge the monster's assault. The Pegasi were also in the sky. They rushed down, all of them neighing in anger. It looked as if they were super keen on protecting their master. Without fear, they rushed down towards the monster that had previously been lurking beneath the earth. The hair on the monster seemed to regenerate. After being shaved, the tentacles started to grow back. Many of the Pegasi that charged into battle found themselves tangled in the brush of tentacles. Many of the winged horses were ripped apart and thrown away, casting blood across the ruined land. The body of the subterranean monster was massive, at least 100 meters long. Its shell was purple and black, and countless little legs wriggled beneath it, each one possessing their own tentacles. The monster lifted up its terrifying body as the tentacles writhed in a ghastly dance. One by one, the Pegasi were being torn to shreds as it came after the red pony that was still in Han Sen's arms. Why is this thing so intent on coming after the red pony? There must be something quite special about it, if that is the case. Han Sen was surprised by the turn of events. The red pony he had planned to kidnap, he ended up carrying as he escaped using the skill arrow. As he went, he swung and waved around his flaming Rex spike, which burnt all the tentacles that came near into soot. A long scream came from afar, signaling the arrival of the Pegasi king. It was cloaked in clouds, evidence of the wrath it brought with it. The Pegasi king's clouds began to spread, falling down on the massive creature below like bombs. They clung to the tentacles, restraining them like glue. Caught within the thick, muculent clouds, the monster could not get its tentacles free. It struggled and thrashed madly, but to no avail. But the monster was too big and its body was extremely strong. After a grand push, it managed to tear the white clouds and continue its pursuit of Han Sen and the red pony. The Pegasi and Pegasi king no longer cared for Han Sen, and they diverted all their attention to the monster. They assaulted its body, tentacles, and legs, biting everything they could with great ferocity. Howl! A chilling howl shrieked across the grassy field. At great speed, a gray wolf was dashing towards the scene of the battle. Behind it, the tsunami-like wolf pack followed. The mark on the wolf king's forehead shone like a beacon once more, which made the other wolves turn blue. Their fur shone with a blue light, and their eyes were each like sapphires. It was like a ghostly wolf pack. Han Sen was shocked. He thought the wolf pack had come to attack the Pegasi. But the wolf pack, shrouded in a blue light, leapt into the fray with the monster of the Pegasi's strife and began tearing into its legs. Instead of fighting the Pegasi or causing trouble, they had come to the aid of the Pegasi, helping them in their battle. The Wolf King looked up at the sky and howled again. The blue mark on its forehead was shining brighter than Han Sen had ever seen it. The light veiled many of the Pegasi above and seemed to buff their abilities, too. The Pegasi appeared stronger and faster, and they fought with greater ferocity. The Pegasi king flapped its wings as white air swirled around it. Like arrows, short streams of white wind rained down on the monster, pegging down its tentacles and legs. The wolf pack and Pegasi attacked the monster without fear, which enraged it. It opened its mouth and swallowed a few horses and wolves, but it was no use, as it only resulted in more and more allies taking their places. The monster's body was covered with wolves and pegasi, which hindered its mobility. With its agility suffering, the bites of its attackers came more frequently. Although most of the wolves and pegasi were unable to hurt it, beneath the brutal suppression of their subordinates, the Pegasi King and Wolf King were now free to enter the fight themselves. Han Sen froze as he looked down from the sky. This was the first time he had ever witnessed such a large-scale fight between creatures take place. The fact that two different species were cooperating with each other in such a way was incredible. The fact that the Wolf King's abilities allowed it to buff the Pegasi surprised Han Sen to no end. He thought that the Wolf King was an incredibly special creature. Although the Wolf King's personal power was below average when compared to other adult super creatures, the support skills it had were extremely effective. The wolf pack could not fly, but with the buff, they were able to glide in the air with a power and speed that was almost unrivaled. It was an amazing skill. If I kill the Wolf King, I'll get the Aura Beast Soul, won't I?
Han Sen wondered.
The Pegasi King's power wasn't too far off the Wolf King's, either. Its power was mid-low on a chart of super creature strength. The white clouds that it fired were like glue, working to restrain the monster. It also dulled the fangs of the monster, as if they had been encased in plastic. This was a very special, very unique power. Han Sen could not be sure which element it was associated with, though. The Wolf King's claws now shredded the shell of the monster, which had it shrieking and trembling in pain. The Pegasi King flew down from the sky, hitting the monster's belly. The horn on its head drilled into the monster's hide and left a deep wound. The monster was now incredibly angry, but under the constant assault of wolves and Pegasi, it couldn't do much. It was losing the fight. It kept working its legs in a bid to return underground. The Pegasi King summoned a large white cloud to cover the ground, which trapped the monster's claws inside it. The claws lost their sharpness, which prevented the monster from digging its way back beneath the earth. The monster, however, had already dug itself into the ground a little. With the creature now stuck, unable to go any deeper, it made the fight even easier for the Pegasi King and Wolf King. The Wolf King ran along the monster's body, and wherever its paws touched, chunks of shell were torn off. The Pegasi King's horn was not weak, either. Every hit made the monster cry out in pain. It looks like greater numbers always prevail. If they fought alone, none of them would be able to beat the monster. Going up against the wolf pack and crowd of Pegasi, this wretched monster doesn't stand a chance. Han Sen thought as he observed the battle. The red pony continued to rest in Han Sen's arms. It had excitement in its eyes as it watched the fight unfolding below. Han Sen's eyes turned, and he said, "The Pegasi King is battling the monster. This is the best time for me to escape, with a pony in tow. Being able to escape and do so with a new super pony friend is a rare opportunity, and in many ways, I'll be hitting two birds with one stone." Han Sen got excited at the prospect, so he turned around and prepared to leave. But as he did so, he discovered that not too far behind him, a group of Sacred Blood class Pegasi had been standing there staring at him the entire time. Cough. Han Sen immediately gave up his plan of kidnapping the red pony. The Pegasi horde was far too big for him to compete with. If he really wanted to steal the red pony, it was unlikely he could escape whilst carrying it. It would be inevitable that the king would catch up and swiftly kill him. Han Sen landed a good distance away from the battlefield and put the red pony down. He raised his hands and began to walk away, slowly. The Pegasi immediately swooped down to surround the red pony. Han Sen tried to leave, but there were many more Pegasi blocking his departure. The red pony neighed in Han Sen's direction, which prompted the Pegasi that prevented his departure to move aside and allow him to pass. Han Sen was surprised by this. After today's events, he was well aware that there was far more to a creature's mind than he had previously believed there to be. He understood them a lot more, he felt. He turned around to look at the pony, waved, and then left. The monster was mostly dead by this point. Han Sen was afraid that once the Pegasi King and Wolf King were done, they'd return to finish him off. Therefore, he did not plan on hanging around any more than he had to. The Pegasi crowd was dizzyingly large. There could very well have been a million of them. It was no wonder why the monster could only hide underground. The only reason it came out was because of the red pony, which had been left alone. But even that attempt failed, which had the monster swiftly bombarded by the Pegasi and wolf horde, leading to a quick death. Han Sen thought Lu Hui's plan to kill the Wolf King was ridiculous. The wolf pack itself was incredibly powerful, but what if the Pegasi horde had also come to its aid? They'd stand no chance. The Wolf King's buffs were incredibly powerful, strengthening its pack more than anyone could guess. Han Sen did not believe humans could kill the Wolf King for as long as the wolf pack lived. Han Sen heard one final scream erupt from the maw of the wicked subterranean monster. And then, silence. Han Sen increased his walking speed, as a result, wanting to leave this area as soon as he could. After walking for a whole day, Han Sen was finally away from the grassy plainlands. Suddenly, clouds formed in the air around him and a Pegasus flew by, carrying a red pony. The pony's head was lifted high in a look of pride. When Han Sen saw the Pegasi King arrive, the first thing he thought to do was run. He stretched his legs and took off, but it was to no avail. He wasn't half as quick as the Pegasi King, and it caught up in no time at all. It landed in front of him. The red pony leapt off the Pegasi King's back and happily ran up to Han's senator with its head. It rubbed him as best it could. Then, it spit something out of its mouth onto the ground. Han Sen took a closer look and realized that it was a fist-sized dark purple crystal. The red pony used its head to nudge it closer to Han Sen. "Is that for me?" Han Sen, looking at the crystal, wasn't quite sure what to believe. He never thought something like this would happen to him in this world. Upon looking at it, Han Sen realized that it was a life geno-essence. It was most likely from the subterranean monster that the Pegasi and wolves had just killed. The fact that the red pony had brought it to Han Sen was incredible. Han Sen was feeling as if he had accidentally stumbled across a lottery ticket that paid out $5 million. The red pony did not understand what Han Sen had asked it. When he didn't pick it up, the red pony grabbed it with its mouth and spit it into Han Sen's hand. "You were too kind to me. There was no need for you to give this to me," Han Sen told it. But it was a different story in his heart. Inside, he was alight with excitement as he held the crystal tightly in his hands. The red pony rubbed Han Sen's leg until the Pegasi King neighed for it to return. Then, it did. The red pony leapt back up onto the Pegasi King's back, looked at Han Sen, and made a noise. It must have meant goodbye. The Pegasi King flapped its glorious wings and shot off into the sky, disappearing in but a few seconds. Good things can just spring upon you. I thought my time out here would have been a waste. I couldn't have been more wrong. What a delightful surprise. Han Sen held the dark purple crystal in his hand. There was nothing special about it, and it most certainly wasn't like the life geno-essence of the fire-scale T-Rex that burnt so hot that no one could even touch it. I should be able to eat this life geno-essence, no problem.
Han Sen liquid IT.
It did not melt as it had in the first god's sanctuary, however. The dark purple crystal was like a real crystal. It was hard. That's strange. Why can't I eat it? Is this not a life geno-essence? Han Sen licked it a few more times, but nothing happened. No matter which way he considered it, it had to be a life geno-essence. It looks like if you want to eat a life geno-essence in the second god's sanctuary, you've got to do something special. Han Sen did not dare swallow the crystal whole. Clearly, randomly swallowing a crystal wouldn't be the solution. If neither the Pegasi King nor Wolf King wanted it, there had to be something up with the life geno-essence. As such, Han Sen didn't dare eat it just yet, on account of his suspicion. Han Sen already had a few guesses, but he wasn't too sure. He'd have to wait a while longer before proving whether or not his ideas were correct. He put away the life geno-essence and continued his journey. He resolved to return to Devil's Shelter to see if there was any news. He heard Lu Hui had made a deal with the master that resided in the north. They were cooperating to slay the Wolf King. Han Sen could only send prayers their way, for if the Pegasi King aided the wolves in their time of need, neither human party would return. Han Sen had witnessed the powers of the Wolf and Pegasi Kings. Han Sen noticed that although he had the flaming Rex spike, if he wanted to kill a super creature like the Wolf King, doing it solo would be no small feat. Their fitness far exceeded ordinary humans. Due to its speed, Han Sen did not think he'd ever have a chance of striking the Wolf King with the flaming Rex spike. And the Wolf King's power was medium-low, on the scale of super creatures. It looks like I'll still be needing help to make tackling super creatures efficient, Han Sen thought to himself. Although he could not find help at the drop of the hat, the least he could do was improve his own power. The toxic dragon drill was clearly not strong enough to suit his needs, so he decided to modify it and bring it up to par with an S-class skill. If he did that, it'd be far more useful in his fights against super creatures. The best way to modify a Hyper Geno art was through combat, so Han Sen used the scanner to scan the flaming Rex spike. He simulated it in the virtual community, planning to practice it in the virtual training camp and modify it there. Han Sen logged into the virtual military training camp and looked at his friends list. Xianfei was not online, so he decided to matchmake. Hui Haifeng had been on a roll lately, and he had just taken first place in the military fellowship tournament. Although it was only for the league that used spears, he was still satisfied with the result. Even if it was just a single award, it wasn't something easily obtainable. Hui Haifeng had practiced his spear skills for a great number of years. It was nice to see it pay off, somewhat. He logged into the virtual training camp, preparing to practice his melee skills. He hoped that in the next tournament, his ranking could be even higher. Quickly, Hui Haifeng found an opponent through matchmaking. It was a person called Little Soldier on the battleship, and their ranking seemed to be normal. After entering the arena, Hui Haifeng was taken aback. The weapon his opponent was using was very strange. It was 2 meters long, giant sharp weapon. It looked like a big folder umbrella. The metal folds looked lethal, and the weapon itself was quite scary. What kind of strange weapon is this? It looks like a greatsword and a medieval lance combined. But it looks so much cooler than they could ever look. How do you even use that thing? Hui Haifeng eyed it with curious wonder. Although lances could be used with one hand, that was best saved for riders. Riders would use the speed and power of their mounts to create powerful impacts. Battling on foot like this, with a weapon held in one hand, did not seem particularly useful. As a spear elite, he thought the weapon was a little too big, as well. It was definitely not a weapon that could be used effectively as a spear, but neither could it be used as a sword. With its cylindrical body, few skills could be cast efficiently with it. The weapon interested Hui Haifeng greatly. He was looking forward to seeing what skills could be performed with such a weapon. Hui Haifeng, who had come here with empty hands, now summoned a big spear. It was 2 meters long and as thick as an arm. The point itself was 1 foot long and made of steel. The spear was called the champion spear. Many people were able to use a champion spear, but few could master it. Because the champion spear lacked the mobility of a lance, its effectiveness was placed in the power behind it. People who lacked the necessary strength or momentum could not use it as well. Han Sen noticed his opponent was using a champion spear, and at this, he looked happy. This was because the thrusting skill of his flaming Rex spike was derived from that same weapon. Han Sen was wielding the Rex spike, sprinting towards Sea Wind. The Rex spike in his hand began spinning, the opener for Toxic Dragon Drill. Before, Han Sen had already learned Screw, the lance skill, and this ability was cast with great finesse and power. The Rex spike was heavy and hard. If cast against a great shield, the great shield would be broken into splinters. Sea Wind lifted his champion spear, knocking up the incoming, spinning Rex spike. Unfortunately for Han Sen, his move wasn't as effective as he had hoped. Sea Wind then lashed out like a mad dragon, twirling around in the air with his waist. There was so much power in the strike. Han Sen had no choice but to pull down his weapon and block the attack.
Young.
The spear and Rex spike collided. Han Sen was forced to take 2 steps back, and he frowned as he did so. Because the Rex spike was just a virtual object that the system had scanned, it lacked the real flame and toughness of the original object. The only characteristics that translated over were its weight and shape. The Rex spike should have been heavier than the champion spear. If this hit made the system determine that Han Sen had to take 2 steps back, it meant that his opponent was stronger than he was. This wasn't a ludicrous thing. If he was an evolver, then Sea Wind had a fitness of around 150. But Han Sen was far past that number. His weapon was heavier than his opponent's. and his power and strength exceeded his opponent's as well. Yet, for some reason, he lost the clash and had to fall back. Si Wen did not move, and Han Sen sought to attack again. His spear skills are strange. Han Sen stared at Si Wen's spear. He was at a disadvantage, and his inability to determine the unique skills his opponent employed must have been why he was beaten back.
Young.
Another collision of blades, and Han Sen was beaten back by the champion's spear again. The system couldn't be incorrect, and there was now no doubt that his opponent was stronger than he was. Si Wen swung his spear towards Han's senator, aligning his Rex spike horizontally. He blocked the incoming spear.
Young.
Han Sen could not withstand the force of the strike, which forced him a few more steps back. It was so powerful, he almost felt as if the Rex spike was going to be knocked out of his hands. Although Han Sen had already tried to use the toxic dragon drill against Si Wen, he could feel the difference in the quality of their skills. His opponent was indeed a master of the champion's spear. The spear skills were so strong that his strikes were like a dragon unleashing its wrath on an unsuspecting world. When he thrust, it was like the bite of a hidden snake. The attacks were incredibly fast and unpredictable. Han Sen was attacked by the spear continuously and wasn't given the opportunity to fight back. When Hui Haifeng started swinging his spear, the attacks came down like tsunami waves, unrelenting. Hui Haifeng was a little disappointed in his opponent. He thought Han Sen's weapon was something special, but now, he was only using it like a big mutant spear. Aside from the screw attack he had performed, the rest of his performance was subpar. Although Han Sen was being brutally suppressed, he did not panic. His opponent's spear skills were powerful, but Han Sen's fitness was higher. It'd still be extremely difficult for Si Wen to win. As Han Sen continued to block his attacks, he also analyzed the skills used against him. He wanted to do a deep dive on them all and learn their ins and outs. The powerful spear skills he was witnessing were ideal for a powerful weapon like his own, and if he could learn those skills, perhaps he could modify them to improve Toxic Dragon Drill. He remained like that for a while. Han Sen was eventually able to notice that the reason his opponent's attacks were so strong was because he was using a Hyper Geno art for support. It wasn't purely down to the skills he used. If Han Sen could not watch the flow of his energy, then he'd be unable to learn anything from him. That would be a waste. Hui Haifeng's attacks escalated in their ferocity and strength. He wanted to end the fight, out of boredom. The strange weapon Han Sen wielded did not surprise him as he expected it to, so he grew tired of the battle. After fighting for some time, Hui Haifeng's perception began to change. Although Han Sen's fighting skills were ordinary, he had a lot of stamina. Furthermore, his formation was strange and unique. Although Hui Haifeng had an advantage and was constantly on the offensive, he wasn't any closer to victory than when the fight first began. Interesting. Hui Haifeng raised his lips. A person's strength was not derived solely from their physical attack power. It came from their endurance as well. Under his wild attacks, Han Sen was no longer falling back. Han Sen was blocking to the best of his abilities. Blocking did not cost much, and it was a way to keep the fight going. His calm demeanor and relaxed judgment surprised Hui Haifeng too. Although Hui Haifeng was a colonel, he was also in charge of teaching spear-wielding in certain departments. He was not only really good at using spears, but his personality as a human being was far better than other soldiers. From what Hui Haifeng could tell, his opponent had to be an aged soldier like he was. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so calm. This calm and calculated behavior was something that could only be honed by suffering many near-death experiences. It was not something that could be learnt in a classroom, or by simply having a power that was rarely challenged. If you cleanse your mind, you can be calm. This was something Hui Haifeng had only just learned a few years ago. If his opponent could do the same, then it was evident he was no mere rookie. Then, he noticed that Han Sen's skills and abilities were slowly beginning to morph as they battled. He's actually creating new skills for this creepy weapon right here, in the midst of a fight. It's no wonder his movements were strange during the beginning, as he must have been applying the skills of another weapon, like a lance, at first. But following these modifications, I can immediately tell that the skills are better suited for the strange weapon. Hui Haifeng now understood Han Sen's purpose. When he saw Han Sen attack now, it was like observing his own shadow. If my Daybreak Spear was that easy to learn, then it wouldn't be the best spear skill out there. Hui Haifeng's eyes flickered with a glint of evil as he changed up his move set. The powerful spear skills from earlier suddenly became soft. The skills were so gentle and elegant. The heavy champion spear suddenly became like a needle in a little girl's hand. Every strike was so small and fast. It was like he was sewing beautiful embroidery on Jiangnan cloth. Han Sen was taken aback, thinking that such a change was quite strange. Not often did people stop being rough and recede into gentleness. The toughness and softness had totally changed, without error. He couldn't imagine how a person could use such a big spear with that much grace and finesse. The Rex spike was a blunt, heavy weapon, and against those delicate spear skills, he wasn't quite sure what to do. The style was restricting his momentum, and the situation had just taken a turn for the worse. Han Sen was having a hard time under the oppression of Hui Haifeng's barrage of spear strikes. The fast-paced attacks restricted any use of his Rex spike. If he used his dual skill, he'd have no trouble thwarting his opponent. But Han Sen was here for the sole purpose of improving his Rex spike skills. As much as he wanted to, he had to forget using the dual skill and hold strong the way he was going. His opponent was a master spear wielder. Delicately, the man alternated between raging skills and gentle skills, which kept forcing Han Sen to retreat. The softer skills kept hitting Han Sen because of their speed. They came thick and fast, and with the Rex spike's encumbrance, Han Sen could never guard against one of those strikes in time. Fortunately, the movement of Han Sen's body was as excellent as always. As a result, he had managed to avoid many lethal attacks. Still, he was getting hit, and his health was dropping bit by bit. It had now dropped below 20. Han Sen's mood had become glum, but he never conceded his usage of the Rex spike. If he wanted to use this weapon in the future, he'd have to tolerate situations like this. And it was better to be cruelly beaten here than out there, as that could lead to death. That was why he had to remain steadfast and train himself with the Rex spike here. Han Sen racked his mind, trying to think of a way he could break the unceasing barrage of attacks, but he couldn't. The spear skills cast against him were too fast for his current lumbering usage of the Rex spike. Further and further, Han Sen was pushed back. He was nearing the wall of the arena, still unable to turn the tides. His health had now dropped below 10 points, and he could no longer dodge. For all intents and purposes, the battle was already lost. Hui Haifeng's champion spear then became a blinding flash of light, driven towards Han Sen with a speed that was greater than that of a meteor. Although Hui Haifeng admired Han Sen, if he insisted on sticking to that weapon and not using something else that would draw out his true strength, then Hui Haifeng had no choice but to end things here and now. Han Sen watched the flash of light coming and felt that it was unfair, losing a battle like this. It upset him, but he was here for the Rex spike, and for that, he was not willing to throw in the towel. Not now, not ever. Han Sen did not want to lose the battle like this. If he had already lost, then it didn't matter. Dropping his defense, he lifted up the Rex spike and swung it towards his opponent's head. Han Sen fueled this strike with all the anger and sadness that had welled up inside him, even though it was highly likely his opponent would evade it, and he'd still end up suffering the final blow. He was going to lose either way, but it was better to go out in a blaze of glory than to wither away, after all. While he was attacking, Han Sen summoned the image of the bone elephant shattering rocks in two. That feeling of being able to break through the opposition with no fear was what Han Sen wanted, most of all. Han Sen, at that moment, wished he was the bone elephant. He wanted to smash Sea Wind into pieces and unleash all his anger. At that decisive moment, Han Sen felt his Dongxian Sutra kick into action. But the energy wasn't flowing along with Han Sen's body. It was adopting a simulation of the bone elephant's energy flow. Oppress. That was the only word that came to mind when Han Sen mustered the strength of the bone elephant he was going to mimic. It felt as if an elephant was indeed running through his body, and he was being given its strength. The power of the elephant coursed through his veins and was injected into the Rex spike. Hui Haifeng noticed as Han Sen suddenly abandoned his strained hope for victory and dropped his guard, putting everything he had into one last strike. He knew that it wouldn't hit him. Attempting an attack with such blunt, heavy weaponry was silly. It would be too slow. His champion spear could pierce Han Sen's heart and knock away that last remaining bit of health before the wreck spike was halfway through its swing. Hui Haifeng was holding his massive champion spear, yet he used it with the delicate precision of a needle, and his opponent's heart was where it was set to poke and weave the bitter tangs of defeat. But just as the tip neared his heart, his face changed. The weapon in Han Sen's hand accelerated. Whoosh! The mighty, heavy weapon split the air, producing a deafening sound as it soared. It made Hui Haifeng feel as if the world was shrinking, as the hideous weapon obscured his vision. In his eyes, its image became bigger and bigger. Hui Haifeng was shocked. He didn't understand how or why his opponent's skills had suddenly become so scary. But now was not the time for him to think. All he could do was attempt to block the monstrous strike. He clutched the spear with both hands and brought it before the incoming attack. It was not as if he did not want to pierce his opponent's body, but Han Sen's attack looked like an extension of the weapon and vice versa. They were one. It made him feel as if, were he to continue his attack without pulling back to block, he'd be smashed into dust.
Young.
The powerful wreck spike smacked the champion's spear. The thick, steel body of the spear was broken into pieces. The wreck spike did not slow down, either. On it went. Hui Haifeng had not expected his opponent to pull off such a powerful attack. He couldn't dodge it now, either. The weapon was simulated by the system, so the toughness of weapons was equalized for both opponents to preserve fairness. But if he could wreck the resilient champion's spear, there was only one possible reason why. His opponent was too powerful. Pang! Hui Haifeng was like paper, cruelly smashed in half. 100 HP points were depleted in a single moment, and he was taken out of the arena. Holy sugar! Is this guy cheating? How can an evolver possibly possess such power? After Hui Haifeng exited the arena, he was gobsmacked. Han Sen himself was taken aback by the power he had summoned for that attack. He didn't expect to be able to simulate the bone elephant's energy so well, but by doing so, he had been given the power to defeat his opponent in a single, devastating blow. With such power, combined with the flaming wreck spike, there is no way I can lose to super creatures now. Han Sen was incredibly happy, but all of a sudden, his body felt incredibly weak. The bone elephant's attack was so powerful, it had drained his entire body of its energy. If Han Sen had not learned Jade Sun Force and Long Live, which worked to keep generating more and more, he might have collapsed on the spot. Han Sen tried to add Sea Wind as a friend. The power of the bone elephant was impressive, but it seemed like an attack of last resort, one that could only be used under the direst of circumstances. It made his body weak, after all. Han Sen did not dare to use it freely, as he would still be better off practicing the wreck spike with skills for general usage. He'd only use the elephant's energy if he absolutely had to. Sea Wind's spear skills were masterful. If he was able to spar and practice with him a few more times, Han Sen imagined he'd be able to modify Toxic Dragon Drill a great deal. Hui Haifeng accepted Han Sen's friend request. He sent a message asking, "What was that skill called?" Han Sen contemplated his answer for a minute, and then replied, "Elephant Wreck Strike." Han Sen wasn't very talented when it came to naming things. For this name, he used the most basic of naming rules. He took one word from each component of the skill, one word from the flaming wreck spike, and one word from the bone elephant, whose power he had simulated. That was a very good elephant wreck strike. It really does have the power of an elephant and T-Rex. Hui Haifeng then went on to ask, "Are you an old soldier?" "Yes, I am." Han Sen had been in the army for a year, so he thought that qualified for an old soldier. Poor Han Sen. He didn't know the true meaning of old soldier. With Hui Haifeng already suspecting he may have been one, this confirmation led to no further suspicions on his behalf. "Do you want to practice with that strange weapon of yours?" Hui Haifeng asked. "Yes, I do. I managed to get my hands on this berserk sacred blood beast soul, and I want to become proficient with it. Unfortunately, I have been unable to find or formulate the correct skills to go with it," Han Sen answered. "Berserk sacred blood weapon, you say? That is lucky. It's a unique weapon, so perhaps you can create your own special skills for it. Come, let us practice once more." Hui Haifeng invited Han Sen into another match. "Brother, I appreciate it, but I cannot do this again. That elephant Rex strike cost me my entire reserve of energy, and I can't convoke it all back so easily. My bones are pretty brittle right now, Han Sen said. Although things weren't as bad as he made them out to be, he was pretty drained. He would be at a disadvantage right from the start, so there was no way it would yield decent training results. That's okay. We've added each other as friends now. If you ever want to train, just hit me up, Hui Haifeng happily responded. I'll be sure to. Thanks a lot, Han Sen said. We are battle buddies. You are welcome. I am interested in your weapon, Hui Haifeng said. After Han Sen exited the virtual training camp, his mind kept drifting off to the bone elephant's qigong. If the Dongxian Sutra could simulate elements of a qigong, did that mean he could simulate the qigong of the black bear, silver fox, or even the weird gourd he owned? Thinking of this, Han Sen was pretty excited at the prospect. The bone elephant's energy possessed a raw, wretchedly kinetic power. He wondered what might occur if he were to simulate the qigong of other creatures. If I simulate the silver fox's energy, does that mean I would be able to cast lightning? Han Sen was leaping at the thought. If it worked as he had theorized, Han Sen believed that he had just hit the jackpot. If he could simulate the qigong of the children of super creatures, he could do whatever he wanted. He would become indestructible. Amidst this excitement, he tried to simulate the silver fox's qigong. Although he could feel his power increase under the simulation, no lightning manifested. Strange. Where's the lightning? If I can simulate it, where's the snap and crackle of electricity? As Han Sen thought about it, he came up with an idea. It must be because I haven't finished the first tier of the Dongxian Sutra. Perhaps I cannot summon elemental powers because I have not unlocked the first gene lock. Although it was just a guess, it was most likely the truth. Therefore, Han Sen's desire to finish the first tier of the Dongxian Sutra increased, and he hoped to do it so he could see whether or not he could summon elemental powers once it was done. But Han Sen's Dongxian Sutra had reached some sort of soft cap. After the rapid acceleration he had gained during his time underneath the peach tree, not much progress had been made since. If he could get over his current slump, he might be able to break the first tier. The peach flower smell increased my progress with the Dongxian Sutra by a lot. If I can nab one of the peaches from that tree, perhaps I can unlock the first tier. Han Sen was now deep in thought, pondering that wondrous tree. But thinking about it further, it would take another few months before peaches started to bloom there. It'd be a while before he could eat one. Han Sen rested the following day and later met up with Hui Haifeng again in the training camp. Han Sen asked him if he was available to help him train, and Hui Haifeng quickly agreed. Han Sen gathered a great many ideas from his observations of Hui Haifeng's skills, but his spear skills required the support of a hyper-geno art, and therefore, Han Sen could not copy the skills fully. Still, he was able to make great changes to the Toxic Dragon Drill. Its power was far more pronounced than what it was previously, and it suited the Flaming Rex Spike far better than it previously did. Over the next few days, Han Sen spent his time practicing with his Rex Spike and honing his skills with it. But now, he thought it was time to ask around and follow up on leads for locating a solo super creature. For this, there were a few preparations he wanted to take care of first. If Han Sen fed a black crystal to the Deadeye Peacock, it'd take a month for the evolution process to complete. He believed its strength would be delivered a great boon, however. The bolts he fired would be faster and stronger, and proved to be of great aid in his future hunting of super creatures. As Han Sen exited the virtual camp, his communicator rang. It was a strange number that was dialing him, one which made him furrow his eyebrows. It was a communicator given to him by the military. Ordinary people could not call it, so whoever was calling him had to be from the inside. He accepted the call, and the image displayed gave Han Sen a shock. It was Li Xingluan. Why are you looking at me with such surprise? I am a high-level hacker, and breaking your defensive systems is easy-peasy lemon-squeezy. Finding your information was effortless, Li Xingluan said, with a smug expression. Then you should know that these calls are monitored, yes? Han Sen responded, with a wry smile. If that concerned me, what kind of hacker would I be? Don't worry, no one can see us talking. No one will even know you were on your communicator, Li Xingluan said, with much confidence. You can look for me in the shelter, so why are you going to such lengths just to talk with me? Han Sen shrugged his shoulders, not comfortable doing something that was against the law. Han Sen believed that if you kept your nose out of trouble, then no trouble would come to you. Illegal deeds were never wholly invisible, and there was always a trace that could be followed up on. Li Xingluan had never seen a better hacker. Therefore, he believed himself to be the best. I'm contacting you because it's an emergency. You haven't been in the shelter for the past few days, so this was the only way I was able to get in touch with you, Li Xingluan explained. But seeing his expression, it didn't seem to be one of any particular concern. Han Sen didn't quite believe it was an emergency that prompted this unexpected call. Hacking military systems just seemed like a normal thing for Li Xingluan to do, and he was in the mood to chat with Han Sen without the fear of others being aware. Well, what happened?
Han Sen asked.
I have unlocked a gene lock, Li Xingluan proclaimed as he poked his own nose. Congratulations. So? Han Sen gave Li Xingluan a strange look, unable to believe the quirky fellow had hacked military systems just to tell him this. I heard you have created a team to hunt down super creatures, and I would like to join. I know where one can be found, Li Xingluan said. The super creature Li Xingluan spoke of could command the powers of ice and frost. It was a big white bear that made its home someplace in the ice fields. According to Li Xingluan's observations, the giant frosty bear, although frighteningly large, had powers that were of a medium level on the super creature scale. Its speed was slow, which meant they could keep up with it. Because the giant frosty bear could command the powers of ice, those that were attacked could incur frostbite. One of the debilitations such an infliction brought was reduced mobility. Reduced speed and slower reaction times would be some of the problems they'd have to face. After Han Sen read the information gathered on the giant frosty bear, he deemed it something he would like to give a go. Frosty powers didn't frighten him very much. After unlocking his first gene lock with ice skin, elementally, Han Sen had quite the advantage if he was to face this bear. This, in addition to the slower speed of the giant frosty bear, made it an ideal target. And if they failed in their task of killing it, they could at least fall back with relative ease. Han Sen found himself getting a little excited after discussing the details with Li Xingluan. Together, they decided to go test the bear out. When Han Sen returned to the shelter, he heard about what happened with Lu Hui and the Master in the North's cooperative assault against the Wolf King. It turned out that they failed and incurred great losses in their struggle. Word was, they gained the upper hand at first, and things were going relatively well until the sudden appearance of a legion of Pegasi. They arrived there and aided the wolves. The cooperative human armies were promptly wrecked, which forced them to retreat. At the end of the day, it was a loss. Han Sen sighed, as he had personally witnessed the capabilities of the Wolf King and Pegasi King. Han Sen didn't want to bother them, after his previous experience with them, so taking on solo super creatures was his current preference. He found Li Xingluan and Wang Yuhang making their preparations to go to the giant frosty bear. Han Sen did not bring the silver fox with him, as he was hoping to hunt some sacred blood creatures along the way. Li Xingluan told Han Sen that there were creatures that looked like penguins in the area they were headed. They were really small, and if he was able to hunt the sacred blood variants and eat a few of them, he'd rack up a lot of sacred geno points in a short amount of time. The giant frosty bear lived against the ice sea. Along the coast, one particular part of the sea had wholly frozen over, and that was where the giant frosty bear tended to reside. When they arrived at the area they sought, it wasn't long before they found a sacred blood creature. They spotted it from afar, and it was a big white bird that just stood in one place, cleaning its feathers with its tongue. It looked like a red-crowned crane, but all the creatures around avoided it. They knew that the red-crowned crane was not something to be trifled with. There is no point in sharing such a creature, so how about a little wager? Whoever slays the bird first gets to keep the meat, Wang Yuhang suggested. Sure, that's fine by me.
Han Sen smiled at Wang Yuhang.
Han Sen's little uncle may have had terrible luck, but he enjoyed a good gambit. It was strange, however, for Han Sen had never seen him win. I'm okay with that, too. Li Xingluan wanted a part of the fun, as well. He had only just recently unlocked his gene lock, so he was keen to flex his newfound muscles. Let us all form a line. On the count of 3, we all rush towards the fiend together. After that, it will all be down to a balanced, hearty measurement of luck and skill. Wang Yuheng scratched a line in the ice for them to assemble on. The three of them then stood in a line. After that, Wang Yuheng counted to 3. After the count was up, Wang Yuheng and Li Xingluan were the only two that started running towards the bird. In Li Xingluan's eyes, it looked as if the galaxy was spinning. He accelerated at what seemed faster than the speed of light, racing towards the red-crowned crane. Wang Yuheng was no slouch either. He shouted, and a light burst forth from within him. As this happened, his speed increased, and he managed to catch up and trail right behind Li Xingluan. Like two meteors, they both skated across the ice in a great hurry. Han Sen slowly brought out the peacock crossbow that had just recently evolved. From the quiver, he loaded in a raven feather bolt. With a quick look at the crane, he raised his arms and pulled the trigger. Whoosh! The blacklight bolt flashed and traveled 1,000 meters in the blink of an eye. It shot right past Li Xingluan and Wang Yuheng and lodged itself in the crane's cranium. Sacred blood creature hunted. Snow bird. The beast's soul was not acquired. Consume its flesh to obtain a random numeric amount of sacred geno points, ranging from 0 to 10. The familiar notification tone rang in Han Sen's head. He started laughing as he caught up to Li Xingluan and Wang Yuheng and told them, "Thank you very much. Holy sugar. You cheated. How can you use such an obscene weapon and think it was fair?" Li Xingluan and Wang Yuheng said, exactly at the same time. There was no rule forbidding certain weaponry. You said anything goes. Even you two could have used a crossbow, if you wanted to, Han Sen said boisterously, as he packed the snowbird's body into his backpack. He'd sort it out when he had a break. I was thinking of using mine, but I didn't think it was strong enough. Where'd you get your crossbow? How can a weapon like that possess such monstrous strength?
Wang Yuheng asked, observing Han Sen.
When they hunted the fire-scale T-Rex, Wang Yuheng got a glimpse of the peacock crossbow there for the first time. He had always meant to ask more about it. He knew it was a powerful weapon, but he never expected it to be that powerful. To kill a sacred blood creature from 1,000 meters away was a frightening thing. Han Sen then thought to himself, of course it's powerful. A berserk super creature crossbow and super bolt tends to pack a punch. If it couldn't kill a sacred blood creature with a headshot, I'd just use this thing as firewood. Wang Yuheng did not make any more gambling suggestions, aware that Han Sen would most likely win every wager with that crossbow in his possession. But after that, none of the three spotted a single other sacred blood creature. They spotted a group of the penguin-looking creatures that Li Xingluan spoke of, and as remarkably penguin-like as they looked, they did not see a sacred blood creature in their midst. Only mutant class variants could be seen. The mutant geno points of the three adventurers had been maxed out, so there was no point hunting them. They decided to leave them for others who might come their way. Li Xingluan and Wang Yuheng could only watch Han Sen dine on the sacred blood snow bird in delight, feeling slightly spurned. They didn't think it was fair, and as a result, vowed to never make another wager with Han Sen again. They were now drawing nearer to the place Li Xingluan had spoken of. At this point, they treaded the icy wastes with greater care and caution. The ice was relatively thin, and the blue sea was clearly visible underfoot. Are you sure this is the place? Why have we not yet seen the giant frosty bear? Han Sen and his crew spent half the day searching but did not see nor hear anything that suggested the local presence of a super creature bear. With suspicion, Wang Yuheng had to ask Li Xingluan about his intel. Just as he was going to speak, there were splashes from beneath the ice. A giant white creature had been swimming, and it was now returning to the surface with a 1-meter-long fish in its mouth. The giant frosty bear was 2 meters away from Wang Yuheng when their eyes met. The man and the bear stared at each other for 3 seconds. Then, Wang Yuheng screamed, turned, and started running away. The giant white bear heaved itself out the water, and with the big fish still in its mouth, gave chase to the running man. It ignored Han Sen and Li Xingluan completely. That little uncle can really? Li Xingluan was motionless as he watched the scene. Those words were the only few he could conjure. Han Sen had already summoned his peacock crossbow and loaded it with 7 raven bolts. Without delay, he was hot on the creature's heels. Wang Yuheng continued to scream aloud as he ran, and in the midst of his frightened flight, managed to plead, "What are you guys doing? Help me. If you don't, I'll be the bear's next ice lolly. The 8-meter-tall white bear occasionally jumped as it chased after Wang Yuhang, trying to pounce on him. Whenever it hopped, 1-foot-thick, paw-shaped craters were left behind in the ice that separated those on top and the freezing waters below. Shards and chips of ice were cast about 10 meters after each paw returned to the pulverized ice. The chips of ice pelleted Wang Yuhang a few times, which caused him to shiver. His face was drawn of color, and a white, frosty webbing formed on his skin. His situation looked dire, and you could see his joints stiffen and slow as he went on. With Wang Yuhang getting dangerously close to being pummeled by the wrathful bear, Han Sen could wait no longer. Although he could not aim at the bear's weak spot, he fired a bolt at it to aid Wang Yuhang. The bolt feather traveled 40 meters and struck the bear's leg. The tip of the bolt managed to get lodged inside, which surprised Han Sen. He had already assumed the pelt and hide of the bear was really thick, and despite firing the bolt to just strike anywhere, the fact that the bolt managed to pierce the creature was a testament to the crossbow's new strength. Its evolution was a worthy investment, and it was most certainly capable of slaying super creatures. But in the grand scheme of things, such small feathers were pointless when not fired towards a super creature's weak spot. The frosty bear roared, scratched off the bolt in its leg, and snapped it. Han Sen's heart died a little when he watched the bear do that. It meant that he only had 6 bolts left. The frosty bear forsook its pursuit of Wang Yuhang and turned its attention to Han Sen. Its eyes were full of anger, and it desired nothing more than to brutally murder the person who had just dealt it minor harm. Han Sen then summoned his flaming wreck spike. As the bear leapt towards him, he cast his toxic dragon drill. The 2-meter-long sharp weapon spun like a tornado and drilled into the bear's chest. Roar! The hide of its front chest was torn open by the ravenous wreck spike. Although the wound wasn't too deep, blood was drawn by the whirling blade. The flames singed the fur, too, lighting the borders of the wound like a ring of fire. This result made Han Sen's heart so happy. He felt confident in pushing even further, driving the weapon in deeper. The frosty bear's paws, however, slapped the flaming wreck spike.
Young.
Han Sen felt a great force of strength hit his wreck spike, which made it tremble. The force built up until Han Sen's hands went soft, and the flaming wreck spike was knocked out his hands and sent flying for a good distance. On its descent, it crashed into the ice and slid into the murky depths of the sea below. Han Sen's hand was bleeding, laden with cuts. The brute power of the frosty bear was too much. Li Xingluan fired a few arrows towards the bear with a bow of his own. Its purpose was suppressive fire, which would allow Han Sen to fall back and recover. Han Sen summoned the flaming wreck spike back, but decided not to target the bear head-on again, face to face. With his weapon in hand, he focused on dodging the bear's repeated attacks, waiting for the perfect opening. The frosty bear then rattled its body to shoot out a number of sharp shards of ice. The fire that scorched the bear's chest was then extinguished as a white, icy fog masked the surrounding area. Fortunately, after Han Sen unlocked his gene lock with Jade Skin, he had built up a tremendous resistance to the icy elements. His movement was not restricted in any capacity. The giant frosty bear was, on average, slower than most super creatures. Still, Han Sen had to use everything he had to stay out of the way of the bear's paw strikes. But the situation became grimmer and grimmer as time went on, and he believed himself to have underestimated how powerful super creatures really were. Adult super creatures had a fitness level of around 300, on average. Han Sen's fitness level was 170. With all the hyper-geno arts he had learnt, the most power he could muster was equivalent to a fitness level of 200. He was still far weaker than the super creatures he was anxious to hunt, especially in terms of raw power. The frosty bear's power was far stronger than Han Sen's, but its lower-than-average speed was the boon he needed. Its speed provided Han Sen the perfect opportunity to fight back. Li Xingluan opened his gene lock and fired a few more arrows toward the frosty bear. One of the sacred blood arrows he fired hit the bear's ear, which enraged the creature. The bear then changed its target again, opting to pursue Li Xingluan. Li Xingluan's movement was quite good. He may have lacked the mobility and precise agility Han Sen possessed, but Li Xingluan's speed was top-notch when going in a relatively straight line. This was what Li Xingluan now tried to do. Unfortunately, the frosty bear was not entirely outpaced, and it managed to remain quite close in its chase. Wang Yuhang's body was finally starting to get better. He quickly grabbed some ice and threw it at the bear to draw its attention back to himself again. The frosty bear then abandoned its hunt of Li Xingluan and resumed its pursuit of Wang Yuhang. Han Sen's bolt hit the frosty bear's neck, but this time, it did not turn around and switch targets again. It remained fixated on its chase of Wang Yuhang. It kept chasing him, ignoring the others. Oh heavens, I may not survive much longer. Somebody, I beseech your aid to save me from a wretched demise. Wang Yuhang slipped and fell. With only a second to spare, he managed to dodge the bear's next attack. He was in danger, and he could succumb to the creature's next, fatal strike any second now. His body was also accumulating further layers of frost, as his hair and eyebrows appeared to be painted white. Death was not far off for Wang Yuhang. Run to me.
Han Sen geled to Wang Yuhang.
Han Sen was holding the peacock crossbow, with his finger on the trigger. Arm raised, he took aim at the bear and remained motionless. Wang Yuhang pulled himself up and ran towards Han Sen, screaming for him to fire the bolt. But Han Sen did not move an inch as he waited for Wang Yuhang to draw even closer. The bear came after him, unceasing, with its filthy maw wide open. Its tongue was lax out of its mouth, and it occasionally tried to lick up Wang Yuhang. Fortunately, Wang Yuhang was a powerful man. Even when he suffered from the frostbite that he had incurred, he still managed to stumble to where he was told to be and outpace the bear. Li Xingluan continued to fire arrows from a distance, trying his best to ease the pressure and relieve Wang Yuhang from the pursuit of his would-be killer. His eyes shone like starlight. He possessed a strange power, as each arrow was fired with impeccable aim. They may not have dealt any damage, but he had managed to strike the bear's eyes a few times, too, to buy Wang Yuhang as much time as he could. Wang Yuhang had finally reached Han Sen's position when he ducked and rolled along the ice to dodge one last attack. Han Sen was facing the frosty bear that was now only 1 meter away. He pulled the trigger and fired at the beast with a rapid pace. All of the bolts were fired consecutively, each one set on an airborne voyage to intercept the rampaging bear.